You have 10 things working for you right now.
Not 10 ideas.
Not 10 plans sitting in a notebook somewhere between a grocery list and a half-finished thought about refinancing. 10 actual, operational, cash-producing positions running at this exact moment while you stand in the parking lot of a self-storage facility in rural Indiana, squinting at a fence line that needs repainting. Nobody at this facility knows. The woman at the front desk thinks you're a potential renter. The guy in Unit 47 who's been storing his ex-wife's furniture for 3 years has no idea. The teenager on the riding mower making slow passes across the gravel margin between rows of orange doors doesn't know either. You're wearing a canvas jacket you've had since your late 20s. Your boots have dried mud on the left heel from the drainage ditch you stepped in yesterday at the mobile home park in Crawfordsville. Your truck is a 2017 Ram 1500 with a cracked side mirror you've been meaning to replace for 4 months.
You look like a contractor.
Or maybe a guy who rents a medium-sized unit to store seasonal equipment. You look like nothing worth watching.
That's the whole point.
It started with a question you asked at the wrong time of night. You were tired. Not the productive kind of tired that sends people to bed early. The other kind, flat and directionless, the kind that keeps you up past midnight looking at things you weren't looking for. You type something vague into a search bar, something about passive income, the phrase everyone uses when they mean something different, and 3 clicks later you were reading a forum thread about self-storage unit occupancy rates in secondary markets.
Not glamorous. Not a revelation.
Just a thread on a forum most people would have closed after 40 seconds. You read it for 2 hours. What caught you wasn't the numbers, though the numbers were interesting. It was a sentence buried in a reply from a user with a forgettable username who had been operating a small storage facility for 9 years. He wrote, "The best thing about this business is that people forget they're paying you." You sat with that sentence for a while. Then you started writing things down. The first asset wasn't self-storage. It was a coin-operated laundry on the east side of a mid-sized Ohio city, population 34,000, 2 miles from a community college campus and 4 blocks from a public housing complex. The previous owner had run it for 11 years out of a spiral notebook and a prepaid phone. The machines were serviceable. The lease had 4 years left. The books were loose but the cash was real. You paid $52,000 for it. Used most of what you'd saved over 6 years of working a procurement job that was stable and completely unremarkable. First year net, $41,200.
You didn't tell anyone.
Not because you were secretive by nature, but because you had no language yet for what you were doing, and the people in your life had no frame for it either. Your mother would have worried. Your college roommate would have called it a side hustle, which it wasn't, not exactly, but correcting him would have required a longer conversation than either of you had time for. So you just kept going. Here is what the current picture looks like, 11 years later, as of the last quarterly summary your accountant sent on a Tuesday morning while you were driving through a state route in Tennessee. The original laundromat in Ohio is still running. Added 4 new machines 3 years ago, currently pulling $48,000 net annually. A part-time attendant named Rosalind has worked there for 6 years. She knows the machines better than you do. You pay her well and leave her alone, and the place runs the way a good boring operation should run. The second laundromat came 4 years after the first, in a working-class suburb of Cincinnati. Different demographic, same fundamental need.
People wash their clothes.
That need has not renegotiated itself in the presence of economic disruption. The 2 locations together generate just over $90,000 in net income per year.
Every month.
The way a river moves. The self-storage facility you're standing in front of right now has 180 units across 2 buildings, plus a small climate-controlled section you added 18 months ago for customers storing documents and electronics. Acquisition price was $680,000. You financed 70% through a regional lender who specializes in small commercial assets and does not find self-storage interesting, which you understand to be a feature rather than a flaw. Net operating income last year, $127,000. Occupancy is currently at 89%.
The fence needs paint.
You noted that 2 minutes ago, and you'll get it done before the end of the month. 3 highway billboard ground leases in Tennessee and Kentucky round out the first tier. You do not own the advertising structures. You own the parcels of land they stand on. The advertising companies lease the ground on contracts ranging from 7 to 15 years, with built-in annual escalations written into the language. Each one pays between $900 and $1,600 per month depending on traffic count and proximity to interchange. Some months you genuinely forget about 2 of the 3 until the deposit hits. Then there are the parking lots. A municipal lot in a mid-sized Michigan city, acquired through a county tax auction on a Wednesday morning in November 4 years ago. 14 people were in the room. You were one of 3 who had done any research. You paid $38,500. Current net income, $29,000 per year, managed by a part-time contractor. You reviewed the operating report last Thursday while waiting for a plumber to finish a repair at one of the laundromats. It took 9 minutes. The second lot is a small surface facility next to a regional medical center in Indiana. The medical center is not going anywhere. People will continue to need to park near it. Acquired through the same tax auction process, different county, for $51,000. Net income, $34,000 annually. The commercial cleaning company you purchased from a retiring owner named Gerald, who had built it over 24 years into something that operated almost entirely on routine and momentum. 14 contracted clients, office complexes, a regional insurance company, 2 elementary schools, a pediatric clinic. Revenue just over $1.3 million. Net margin is thin, around 8%, but consistent. The kind of company that loses clients slowly through attrition and replaces them the same way and never makes noise in either direction. Gerald stayed on for 6 months during the transition and showed you everything. You haven't had to touch the operational structure in 2 years. The operations manager he trained handles it. The vending machines are 31 units placed across hospital break rooms, office building lobbies, a transit authority maintenance facility, and 3 fitness centers. Not all of them perform equally. 6 are marginal, and you've been deciding for 8 months whether to relocate or retire them. The remaining 25 generate a combined net of roughly $4,800 per month after product cost, location fees, and restocking labor. It's not the most elegant position in the portfolio. But it was the first architecture, the proof that a machine could sit in a hallway and solve a small problem for strangers and pay you every time without requiring your presence. Everything else you built came after that proof. The mobile home park is a single property in western Indiana.
42 lots.
You own the land and the infrastructure, the roads, the utility hookups, the common areas. The residents own their homes. Lot rent is $310 per month per occupied lot. Current occupancy is 38 of 42 lots. Monthly gross lot rent, $11,780. After management, maintenance and insurance, the net is just over $87,000 per year. You spent 18 months being cautious about this one, reading everything you could find, talking to 3 other operators before you moved. The numbers were never the question. The responsibility was. You take that part seriously. Last are 3 small commercial buildings on triple net leases, a dental office, an insurance agency, and a walk-in medical clinic, all in secondary markets in Ohio and Kentucky. Triple net means the tenants cover property taxes, insurance, and maintenance.
You collect rent.
The leases have between 8 and 14 years remaining. Combined, they generate $156,000 annually in net income with near zero management requirement. The dental office tenant has been in the space for 19 years and shows no indication of leaving. Your accountant's name is David. He has been preparing books for small commercial operators for 22 years. He told you 6 months ago, in a tone that sat somewhere between professional and bewildered, that you have built the most deliberately unglamorous portfolio he has ever reviewed.
You thanked him.
He wasn't sure you understood he'd meant it as an observation rather than a compliment. You understood exactly what he meant. There is a man you see occasionally at a quarterly real estate investor meetup in Columbus. He wears a fitted quarter zip that costs more than your monthly insurance premium on the storage facility. He talks about cap rates and market positioning and disruption vectors in the multifamily space. He has a podcast he mentions twice every meeting. He drives a vehicle that is a statement before he opens the door. When he asked what you were into, you told him, laundromats, storage, a few leases. You watched his face complete the calculation. The boots, the canvas jacket, the laundromats. He smiled the way people do when they've already moved on to the next conversation and haven't bothered to tell their face yet. That calculation was the most useful thing he gave you. Because the moment someone has categorized you as unremarkable, they redirect their attention. And the moment they redirect their attention, you can move through whatever room you're in without friction, without performance, without the cost that comes attached to being perceived as someone worth watching. The ordinary presentation is not accidental. It was chosen, and it works, because every dollar not committed to the performance of having money goes towards something that generates more of it instead.
Not a complex idea.
Just an unpopular one, because unpopular ideas rarely require a social media account. 3 months ago, a woman named Patricia approached you at a small business owner's breakfast your accountant dragged you to. She had been running a mobile pet grooming operation for 6 years, a van, a trailer, 7 regular clients, decent reviews. She wanted to franchise it. Needed $70,000 to build the framework, the operations manual, the branding infrastructure.
She was smart.
Her numbers showed real unit economics. Her client retention rate over 6 years was impressive. But when you asked her about operating costs per van, she hesitated. When you asked about her break-even point at scale, she reached for her phone. When you asked what happens to the model if she goes from 7 clients to 22 and the lead operator calls in sick 3 days in a row, the conversation shifted in a way that told you everything you needed to know.
She had a vision.
She didn't yet have the architecture beneath it. You did not write her a check. You met with her 4 times over 6 weeks. You went through her cost structure line by line. You helped her identify a small business development center through the state that offered consulting and grant pathways she hadn't known to look for. You helped her build an operations manual from scratch, sitting at a folding table in the back of her grooming trailer while she described every step of every process she'd been running from memory for 6 years. By the end of those 6 weeks, she had a cleaner P&L, a documented operations framework, a $45,000 grant approval through a state small business expansion program, and a pilot franchise agreement with one operator she'd already identified. She sent you a message the day the grant cleared. Said she wouldn't have gotten there without the sessions. You didn't tell her what you could have sent in the time it takes to type a routing number. You won't either, because what she built over those 6 weeks belongs to her in a way that a wire transfer never would have. The operational fluency that comes from working through the problem rather than being rescued from it is the difference between a business that survives its own growth and one that collapses under the weight of capital it wasn't ready to absorb. You've watched money handed to underprepared operators accelerate the exact problems it was meant to solve. The operation gets bigger. The loose margins get looser. The unclear systems become unmanageable at scale. And then the money is gone, the business is in worse shape than before, and the person is carrying something heavier than the original problem ever was. What Patricia needed wasn't a check. She needed someone to sit across from her and take her numbers seriously for long enough that she could take them seriously herself. The quarterly summary arrives on a Thursday at 6:47 in the morning. You are at a gas station off a state route in southern Ohio, filling the Ram.
It's cold.
The kind of flat, gray cold that settles into the middle of the country in late autumn and doesn't make any particular announcement about it.
Just arrives. The pump is slow.
You're watching a crack in the asphalt near the front wheel that looks like it's been there since the previous decade.
Your phone buzzes.
David's name on the notification. Subject line, Q3 Portfolio Summary, Final Review. You finish pumping before you open it.
Put the nozzle back. Tighten the gas cap.
Get back in the cab.
Then you read it.
The combined net income across all 10 positions, annualized at current rates, adjusted for the debt service on the storage facility and the 2 triple net buildings that still carry partial financing, comes to just over $612,000.
You read the line twice.
Not because you doubted the number, but because of something that happens when a thing you've been building for 11 years resolves into a single clean figure on a screen. It takes a moment to hold it without immediately moving to the next action item. $612,000.
Per year. Across 10 positions.
Most of which require, at this stage, somewhere between a few hours and a few days of attention per month. Outside, a truck pulls in and parks at the adjacent pump. The driver gets out, a man in coveralls, checks his phone, starts the pump without looking up. The gas station attendant is restocking a display case inside. A crow is standing on the curb near the air compressor, completely still, looking at something that isn't there. Nobody knows what just happened in this cab. The crow doesn't know. The man in coveralls doesn't know. The attendant doesn't know. The state route running past the station in both directions, carrying its ordinary Thursday morning traffic of delivery vehicles and commuters and people running errands they'll forget by noon, that whole moving system has no awareness of what's sitting in this parking space right now. You had thought the feeling would be different.
Bigger, maybe.
The kind of internal shift that announces itself the way a before and after is supposed to. A seam you could feel yourself crossing. There is no seam. There is just the gray sky and the slow pump and David's 12-point times New Roman and the number that arrived the same way all the other numbers have arrived over 11 years. Quietly, in a correctly formatted email, from a man who has never once added an exclamation point. You reply, thanks.
Confirm Q4 call for the 14th.
Then you put the phone in the cup holder and sit for a minute before starting the engine. 11 years ago, you netted $190 from a used laundry machine in a strip mall and sat with that number feeling something that wasn't pride and wasn't disappointment. It was smaller than both, and more precise. The satisfaction of a thing working the way you built it to work.
No applause attached. No audience present.
This is the same feeling, same texture and temperature, same absence of ceremony, just more zeros behind it. What that continuity tells you is that the feeling was never tracking the number. It was tracking the architecture. The confirmation that a system you built with deliberate intent is running exactly as designed, without drama, without spectacle, without anyone at this gas station in southern Ohio having any idea. That's not a small thing. You start the engine. The mobile home park needs a site visit. The fence at the storage facility needs a paint contractor. David has a question about depreciation schedules on the triple net buildings you've been meaning to sit down with. Rosalind texted last night that one of the washers at the Ohio laundromat is making a sound it shouldn't, and you told her you'd look at it tomorrow. Nothing about the outside of this life has changed in the last 12 minutes. The Ram has 103,000 miles on it. The cracked side mirror is still there. You're wearing the same canvas jacket. The boots still have mud on the left heel from a drainage ditch in Crawfordsville. Somewhere this week, you'll watch someone explain to a room why their brand needs to be louder, more visible, more present. You'll watch someone commit serious capital to the performance of scale before the fundamentals have been proven at a smaller level. You'll watch someone spend energy managing the perception of what they're building rather than the structure underneath it. And you'll recognize something it took 11 years of Tuesday decisions and Thursday deposits and Saturday mornings at kitchen tables to be able to see clearly. The performance of building something and the actual architecture of it almost never occupy the same room. The crow is still on the curb. You pull out of the gas station and turn south. The laundromat isn't going to fix itself. You drive.